Hello, I'm Kelsea Hutchings, pediatric nurse practitioner. I specialize in pediatric primary care and integrative medicine. All right, so this is our read before you feed label reading workshop for kids. Of course, a lot of these tips and tricks and all this information can be um, applied to adults as well. All right. Label reading is super important, especially for children, because they are so much more affected by what's in our food. So sugar, anything that's ultra processed, all these chemicals, the dyes, the additives. Also, a lot of companies are marketing our kids' food as natural, whole grain, made with real fruit, no added sugars, gluten free, which doesn't necessarily mean healthy, and we will get to all of that. But it's important because it's really easy for companies to sell to parents because they know that we're just trying to do our best, and they take advantage of that, unfortunately. And even though, they put some of these labels on there, it's lies. It's not, they're manipulating the product. And then, of course, we want kids to have food that's going to fuel them, not drain and inflame them. All right, let's just start out with super simple, the 3-step label check. So first you're going to flip it over. I don't care what the front says. I don't care if it says this is the best thing you could ever feed your child. It will turn them into Einstein. Don't care. Flip it over. All right, so we're going to start with the ingredients list and the nutritional facts. Second, you're going to look at the ingredients. So you want short, recognizable words and as close to as real food as possible. And number 3, we're going to look at the numbers. So we want to look at sugar, sodium, and fiber. Ingredient lists. So we really ideally want our list to be between 5 to 7 ingredients long. Of course, if you're giving them, something that has a lot of greens in it, and it has a lot of recognizable words like alfalfa, broccoli, wheatgrass, things like that, that I would be okay with that. But most things aren't going to have, all those greens or super healthy ingredients in it. So we want it to have 5 to 7 ingredients. Ideally, it typically just means it's less processed. We want real food words, oats, almonds, and apples, not maltodextrin. And order matters. So ingredients are listed from most to least. So if sugar is the first ingredient listed, that is what the food product that your child will be consuming has the most of in it. And then the very last thing is what it has the least of in it. There are over 60 different names for sugars. So anything that says high fructose corn syrup, cane juice, rice syrup, agave, maltose, dextrose, those are all just different words for sugar. Artificial dyes, red 40, yellow 5. Those are two of the ones that, are probably the worst for you, but they're all bad for you. So anytime you see a color listed, it's probably not the best. It is linked to hyperactivity and behavioral issues, and it shrinks the prefrontal cortex, so this part of our brain that is responsible for like impulse control, social and emotional behavior, and regulation, along with many other things. But as far as the hyperactivity and behavior, it's because it's affecting that prefrontal cortex. And then our preservatives, BHA, BHT, sodium benzenate, all those can lead to endocrine disruptions. So it affects the way we're able to metabolize food. It affects the way we are releasing hormones, changes our, all the signal pathways. And then MSG and flavor enhancers, things that say like natural flavors, monosodium glutamate, which is your MSG, allyl yeast extract are just some examples. All right, Welch's fruit snack. I just want to give you all some real world examples because that's how I learn best. Okay, so it is obviously marketed as fruit is our first ingredient. Okay, look over here. They're not wrong. It says fruit puree. Puree is just another word for sugar. So what they do is they take a little bit of the fruit that they have listed here. So there's probably a little bit of grape, a little bit of peach, orange, strawberry, and raspberry. And then they blend it with sugar to make a puree. So, fruit puree, just whenever you see that, just be aware that's just another word for sugar. And it's a way for them to be able to market it and say fruit is our first ingredient. Our second ingredient is sugar. So that is why we have 8 grams of added sugars in here. So total sugars are 10 grams. 8 of them are added sugars. So that means only 2 grams in this whole fruit snack is from natural sugars. So, just be aware of that. Let's see, how else are we marketing this? Made with real fruit. It's an excellent source of vitamins A, C, and E, which they're not wrong. They added that in there. Gluten-free, we're going to see that too. Gluten-free is another way that it's good to label, because some people who, people who are gluten-free, which being gluten-free is a good thing, actually, and that's a whole nother topic I'll get into in another course or workshop. Gluten-free is not a bad thing, but people associate being gluten-free with being healthy. And so a lot of products will put gluten-free on their packaging because it triggers healthy in people's brains, although gluten-free can still be highly processed, still be loaded with sugar, still have artificial dyes. So it's not necessarily true that it's healthy. Okay, so continue to look at this. We've got modified tapioca starch, gelatin, grape juice from concentrate. Whenever you see from concentrate, it's just another word for sugar. So it's the same thing as a puree. It's concentrated fruit with added sugar in it to make it sweet. All of your citric and lactic acids are really, really bad for your bodies. Natural and artificial flavors. That's another trigger word. We'll get into all this in another slide as well. Those are unregulated by the FDA, so it's really anything can be in there. All of your artificial vitamins, so vitamin C, vitamin E, tocopherol acetate, the synthetic vitamin E is a derivative of soy. My son actually, both my kids had milk soy protein intolerances, and when my first was an infant, I had eliminated everything from my diet that was soy and dairy related, and all of his awful symptoms cleared up, except for he would still get very bloated, still be very uncomfortable, and I couldn't figure out what I was still eating that was causing this. Well, it turns out it was my multivitamin, my prenatal that I was still taking at that time. It had the tocopherols, the synthetic vitamin E in it, and since that is a derivative of soy, and that was affecting him, so once I cut that out, he was fine. All right, and then we've got our waxes. We've got our red 40 and our blue 1. I like that they're using turmeric as instead of yellow coloring, but it's still got the red 40 and blue 1. My next button doesn't want to work. All right, better swaps are going to be the That's It fruit bars. They quite literally have only apples and blueberries in them. So try it, see if you can swap that out for your kids. I think it pretty closely tastes like a fruit gummy just in a bar. And this is also going to be better for them too, because this is going to contain, I couldn't find a great picture of the nutritional facts in it, like the ingredients list, but it's still going to contain your fibers that actual fruit would contain, whereas those gummies is just the juice. So even though you're getting the natural sugars in this from apples and blueberries, you're also getting the fiber to counteract that blood sugar spike, whereas in the gummies, you're just getting the sugar, you're not getting any of the fiber. Sorry if you hear my 2-year-old screaming in the background. All right, another good example is Frosted Flakes. So we can see, I don't think this one is necessarily marketed as heart healthy, but I've seen the Frosted Flakes, I believe. There's a lot of cereals that are marketed as heart healthy because they have greens in them. But we can see over here it's a source of vitamins and minerals, which is not a lie. There is some in there. Looking at this ingredient list, we have milled corn, so that's going to be mostly what the cereal is made of, sugar, malt flavoring, and then the synthetic vitamins and minerals. It is the other thing about reading labels is that oftentimes they will shrink the serving size to make the numbers look better. So just think about if your child is going to in fact eat just 1 serving. 1 cup is very small of cereal. Most kids get 2 cups about of cereal. All the sugars in this are added sugar. You see 12 grams, sodium, not awful. We want it under 200 per serving, but remember this is just one serving. So if realistically your child's going to eat 2 servings, then double all of this. We want our sugars to stay under 25 grams for the whole day. So this is a lot for just one serving, and most likely the 2 cups is going to be 24 grams of sugar, and that's going to be essentially their whole day of sugar, not even including the milk, the sugar and milk. All those things are going to add up. Better swap are going to be your Cheerios. Again, it's a small serving. This isn't a perfect change. There's lots of additives, especially on the flavorings. Sometimes they have the artificial colors. But overall, if you had to pick between the two, this is the better option. If your kids don't like the plain Cheerios, which mine don't, I just add some monk fruit and then I chop up some bananas and put it in there, and they seem to like it. This is really low on the sugars because it is just plain. It's not honey nut or anything like that. Our sodium's still pretty high, 190. We want it under 200 for singular servings of things. So it's a better option. All right, so we kind of just talked about this. Under the age of 2, we don't want them to have any added sugars. Kids 2 to 18, no more than 25 a day, which, it's really, adults shouldn't be having much more than 25 grams a day. I think ours are maybe a little bit higher. That's only 6 teaspoons. And then some things to look out for. If you flip over and you look at the serving size and it's anywhere over 9 grams per serving, that should trigger a little flag in your brain. Of course, natural sugars are going to be your sugars that come from fruit juices or just the natural occurring sugar that's in milk, different things like that. And which we still shouldn't be getting any more than 25 grams a day of those, but I'm not as concerned about that. We have so many added sugars in our diets that we need to be looking out for. Sodium, we want to be under 1,200 milligrams per day. Any singular snack food or serving that has more than 200 milligrams should be a red flag. For the fiber, we want more. So anything per serving should have 3 grams or more. It balances the blood sugar, supports the blood health, helps with any constipation, keeps them regular. All right, and also good for your heart. Serving sizes. So we talked about this, how they'll shrink to make everything look lower. So just double check if your child would realistically eat just 1 serving of that item. Buzzwords. Made with real fruit, just fruit concentrate, which is sugar. All natural, has no regulations. It can still have additives in it. Made with whole grain. So there can just be a small percentage of grain. The rest is refined. Gluten-free. Doesn't necessarily mean healthy. Doesn't necessarily mean healthy. It can still be super processed. Light, it has typically less fat, but it has more sugar, sodium, and additives to make it taste better. So, they add a lot of fillers to try to make it taste like it has that fat that they took out of it. And then, of course, we talked about the no added sugar. It can still be high in natural sugars, so just be aware of that. Hidden sugars are really prevalent in drinks. So, although I think it's okay, I think, for kids to have these juices and milks and stuff like that. Just be aware that even if it is made with all apples, none of the fiber's in it. So there's nothing to balance out the child's blood sugar, right? So Capri Suns have 13 grams of sugar per pouch. So that's over half of what they should be having in a whole day. The kids size Gatorade bottle, 21 grams. Chocolate milk, 24 grams. That's just a small school-sized one. That's essentially what they should be having in a day. And then they wonder why these kids are so hyper in school. It's because they're, starting their day out. And that's just the chocolate milk. Consider everything else they're eating that morning. And then the Honest Kids juices, this broke my heart a little bit, 13 grams. So if you are giving juices, just please water them down. Or just be aware that this is what is happening and then, try to have better options available. Gatorade has a ton of electrolytes in it. It was actually developed at the University of Florida. Scientists went out and collected the sweat off the football players in the middle of the summer during their practices, and then went and developed a drink to replace all the sugar, sodium, potassium, magnesium, everything they're losing in that sweat. Oftentimes we give our kids these Gatorades thinking they're good for them because it's electrolytes. Well, unless they're practicing in the Florida heat midsummer in the swamp, playing football and all those pads, they really don't need all that replacement. So if you're going to give Gatorade, please water it down. I actually had a classmate in high school go into kidney failure from drinking too much Gatorade. All right, baby formulas. So baby formula, you know, we want, sorry, trying to move this around. There we go. Okay, so I will always be a huge advocate for breastfeeding. I think breastfeeding should be your number one. But there are plenty of scenarios, and we're not going to get into it now, that breastfeeding is not an option for women, and that is okay. So let's talk about formulas and which are the best. Okay, so we want the protein to be organic cow's milk. A2 beta casein protein is the closest to human milk structure. It's easier to digest. Same with goat milk. It is oftentimes those other proteins are poorly tolerated. It can irritate their gut lining. It can cause them to have reflux, eczema, immune imbalances. If you can find the goat milk A2, it's especially gut friendly. Carbohydrates. Lactose is what's naturally in breast milk, and avoid corn syrup, glucose syrup, maltodextrin at all costs. It spikes blood sugar. It feeds the bad bacteria in the gut. There's research showing obesity later and higher risk of obesity later in life. Maltodextrin is a huge gut distributor. It's actually a strain of black mold, and it can cause leaky gut over time. And then, I'm going to get into leaky gut in some other courses in the future. That's huge with our health. And then glucose syrup is just super processed, and it really strips away any natural proteins. A blend of coconut oil, MCTs, and olive oil are going to be your best non-inflammatory stable fats. Palm oil decreases the absorption of nutrients, specifically calcium and fat. So weaker bones, poor brain building, what we need to build and grow the brain in those early months actually forms the soaks in the gut, stopping those nutrient uptake. Super inflammatory oils are soy oil, sunflower oil, sapphire oil. They're high in the substances that fuel inflammation. They're cheap fillers. And then we need to be careful of the DHA and ARA extract. It's extracted with hexane, which is a neurotoxic solvent, and we can actually build it up in our bodies, and it's really hard to get it out. Breast milk, if possible. We're going to support the gut, build the immune system, feed the brain, and keep the detox pathways clear. Babies really cannot handle high toxic loads, so just be careful with what formulas we're giving them. All right, this Holly Bio goat milk formula, these are going to be your two best options if you do have to formula feed. All right, so it's this first one over here. It's goat milk based. It's that A2 protein. There's none of the extra additives in it, and they have different levels based on the child's age. So this one is like 0 to 3 or 6 months. I can't remember. And you can buy them online. They're overseas. Because a lot of the overseas products are better because, other countries don't allow all these different additives and ingredients. Kindle Milk Organic, it's available in the U.S. I've seen it in stores. This is also another great option, and it uses whole fat milks. I've seen some goat milk options as well. All right, guys, here are some tools and resources. So Yuka, that's an awesome app. You can download it. It tells you what additives are in food, and